Okay, we are live on Facebook.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Coast MAC meeting of July 21st. And we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and our clerk, Cindy Kolkasi, is going to lead us in that.
Okay, and I'll wait for the flag. I think it's coming here. There we go. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll go ahead and take the roll call, and I'm going to start with the regulars, and then I'll just see which alternates are here too. So Beth.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Marty.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Wanda. Here. And I'm going to, I believe, Liz, are you here, Liz Gallagher? I know you're covering for Jill. Maybe she's in the audience.
I don't see her in the attendees.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Brian.
Here.
Ginny.
Here.
Okay, and I'm going to go back. Is Che Casal? Annie Cresswell?
I don't see her.
Okay. Carolyn Madden?
She's here in the
She's in the attendee.
Okay. I just like it. That's how I keep my records. Let's see. And Carl Osier?
I don't see him either.
Okay. Did Liz join yet or?
No, I don't see her.
Okay. Well, hopefully she'll join shortly then. So we'll go for the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Paul.
Okay, so that was Paul, and who was the second?
Was it Brian or Wanda? Wanda.
Okay, Wanda, got it. Okay, so I'll do roll call here. Beth? Maybe she's on mute.
I'm here. So sorry.
That's okay. Scott?
Here.
Marty?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
Wanda?
Aye.
Liz? Not here yet. Brian?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Okay. Make a note to myself. Okay. Do we have any statements of conflict of interest from the council members? Okay, I see none. Any correspondence, Marty?
No, I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Great.
Are you, Elise?
Okay, Marty, I'll turn it over to you for the consent calendar.
Okay. First, I'd like to open by thanking you all for attending this evening's Coast MAC meeting, especially since we're up against the January 6th hearings tonight. We'll be dealing with some administrative issues at the beginning of the meeting, and then we'll focus on the status of the local coastal plan. Although Supervisor Hopkins is off the grid this evening and so is not able to be with us, her wonderful staff members, Leo Chi and Elise Weiland, will be representing her and helping us through the agenda. Supervisor Hopkins will review the recording of this evening's meeting later. The only item in the consent calendar this evening is the May minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
The consent.
Motion to approve?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Forget that.
So moved.
Okay, so is it Wanda and Paul then, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay, let me take a roll call. Beth?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Marty?
Aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Wanda,
Aye.
Liz Gallagher, not yet, Brian,
Aye.
and Ginny.
Aye.
Okay. It's approved. Over to you, Marty.
Okay, the public comment section of the meeting is for public comments about items not on the agenda. As you know, per the Brown Act, the MAC cannot consider issues or take any action on these during this meeting because they were not on the published agenda, but we're all ears. Are there any public comments from the public in the Zoom meeting?
Yes, we have one hand raised, Margaret Graham. Margaret, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Campbell, I'm a little confused about some input on the LCP update. I didn't realize that there was an opportunity to provide that for the LCP issues and responses, and I don't know whether now is the time to provide it or whether I should wait until we actually get to the agenda item of the local coastal plan.
You should wait until we get to the agenda item for the local coastal plan. And I don't think the other items on the agenda are going to take very long. So it won't be a long wait.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Jason, is there anybody on Facebook who would like to comment?
Not seeing anything on Facebook, and there are no further hands raised.
Okay. So we'll go on to the regular, at least Wyland, before we begin with the regular calendar, Elise will update us on what Supervisor Hopkins would have said if she were here. But Beth has her hand up. Beth, do you have a question?
Well, I want to make a comment that's got nothing to do with what's on our agenda at the moment. I'm getting increasingly contact from our constituents that are losing faith in the whole CMAC process. And I see tonight that our attendance isn't bad, but we've had some attendance where we had less than 10 people. And they had hoped there'd be more give and take in conversations, and they're just concerned.
This is actually on the agenda. I'm sorry.
That item is?
It is the first thing on the agenda. It says MAC engagement.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks. Look forward to hearing that in the right place.
Okay, Elise, take it away.
Thanks so much. I have a few updates from that Supervisor Hopkins wanted to have shared with you. You may have seen some of these in other places, but I just wanted to make sure everyone had seen. So after the release of the free Wi-Fi in Guerneville, the following towns are next: Cazadero, Jenner, Bodega Bay, Bodega, and Forestville. So the Alliance has the funding and has ordered all the supplies. As with everything, there's a supply chain backup, especially on electronics. And we're just waiting for those pieces to come in. As soon as they come in, we have the team ready to deliver them. And it'll be really exciting to be able to go to Jenner or Bodega Bay or Bodega and be able to say to people, I can't find you. But more importantly, for businesses and education and disaster communications. And one of the important pieces about this free Wi-Fi project is that we also have on order, we not only have this Comcast broadband going into it, we also have on order Starlink connections with solar and battery backup. So the plan is that during disasters, you'll know, okay, we can go downtown and we'll be able to connect and find out what's going on, even if the power has gone off in other places, even if cell towers have gone down in other places. So it's really an important piece of our disaster planning. At the same time, as these free Wi-Fis have gone out, we've been getting more and more calls from people saying, why isn't it in my street? and we want more residential broadband, which is a reasonable question. We do continue to work with the Russian River Alliance on applying for additional funds. We've applied for a CASF grant. It's the California Broadband Grant, to add an additional 8 communities. They're waiting word on that funding. During this process, we've also been working with the Economic Development Board's Broadband Task Force constantly. So the state's been working on creating some sort of a public-private ownership to provide the middle mile, and providing some funding to the county to provide the last mile program. So this is all working way too slowly to get out to the rural residential areas. And in the meantime, getting these free downtown Wi-Fi's are a good first step. It's what we can do at this point. They are all paid for 5 years, so it'll be working for 5 years. You'll also see that parking enforcement has been a lot stronger. We paid out of our TOT funds for dedicated CHP parking enforcement. And in the month of June, they wrote 91 parking tickets, 21 tickets in other categories, 4 verbal warnings, and 1 towed car that was blocking emergency access. Our July figures look like they're going to be similar. So Marty's going to be talking about how to communicate problems with parking through us to the CHP. I also wanted to let you know that the County of Sonoma Department of Transportation and Public Works, TPW, this month announced that the department has received a $74,000 grant to install smart meters for the water system in Jenner. This project is part of the strategic plan to address water losses in drought areas. And by switching to smart meters and up-to-date meters in Jenner, we can identify sources of water loss and leaks and do a better job containing water issues in that area. And lastly, we're super pleased to let you know that the Economic Development Board, the county did approve visitor center funding for the visitor centers and the chambers of commerce through the Economic Development Board. That application for funding is open right now. We've sent the application out. So Bodega Bay hopefully has applied for that funding. And Supervisor Hopkins has been advocating for that for years to keep these essential business support systems open. So yay, it was good to get that done. So that's the supervisor's infrastructure update of the day. I see a hand up from Paul.
That's me, right? Thank you for the update on the parking enforcement and the parking tickets that were the numbers that were handed out. The people that live in the Bodega to Jenner area, are you seeing a significant change in illegal parking behavior? So is it having an effect on it? I don't know if you know that, Elise, or somebody who lives in the Bodega to Jenner area.
Yeah, I thought you were asking.
I wasn't
Jenner's
really asking.
there.
I was asking for other MAC members.
I know I have certainly noticed this year a distinct drop in both trash and parking issues, although there are always some going on and we still get some complaints, but the number of complaints that we receive are drastically lower.
Okay, well, that's probably a good indicator then.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds like Beth has an input on that. Beth?
Yes, thank you. So I believe that there's a quicker response when there's a problem. I think that we're not getting the repeat offenders that we had been regarding the parking. I think it is having an effect. And the trespassers along the properties on Highway 1, that seems to be helping.
Hey, and that came about because of your guys's parking ad hoc committee that did the research and said, we don't need any new extra programs. We just need better enforcement. And so that's what we went out and got, because that's what your surveys and that's what all your work did. And so it's really important and great what the, you know, the community voice that you guys bring.
Well, thank you.
I'll just make one little comment. We'll probably get good feedback also from EMS in that area, because they were affected by it dramatically. They just couldn't get through in some cases. Thank you.
Yeah, Marty?
Okay. I'd like everybody to know that Beth has agreed to be the point person interfacing with the CHP officer who's managing this process for increased parking enforcement. So if anybody has comments or suggestions or hotspots to identify, please let Beth know and she'll get in touch with the correct people at the CHP. And Brian.
I get, well, two questions, which are somewhat related, but one, with respect to the CHP, do we know when Bodega Bay is getting the resident officer assigned? And then the other thing is, in terms of how much money it's coming out of the TOT for this, I assume that it's probably more than the amount of parking tickets, but is it like drastically more, or is it?
You know, wouldn't it be nice if that balanced out, but it has absolutely no connection whatsoever. The parking ticket money goes somewhere else. It does not come back to us. So yeah, it's too bad. That was the first thing I thought when I went after this, but no, it's $30,000 from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And that covers one weekend day. So 8 hours on one weekend, 1 day a weekend, because our thought was if we're doing it regularly, whether it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you know, on long weekends, we may add Friday or Monday. And if we're doing it regularly, that the news filters through and people stop doing it. So, so that's the way that we kind of kept our budget under control, by having it be Memorial Day to Labor Day and 1 day per weekend.
And then do I don't know if this is connected enough, but do we know if CHP in terms of the resident deputy out in Bodega Bay is?
Oh, sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I'll find out.
You're asking CHP, not sheriff. Is that correct, Brian?
Right. Is it sheriff? Right. Sheriff.
Okay. So there is someone heading out here, and the deputy will be making contact and giving out his the deputy's information when all moved in. That's what I was able to find out today. And we do have, I think, a deputy CHP. I think that's Sean Laurie, Deputy Laurie, or Officer Laurie. And
right.
I think
I was thinking of the replacement for Jason. But
oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and I'll yeah, I'll I think I've got I think we're gonna be hearing soon as to
Okay,
exactly who it is.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Beth, did you have something else?
No, I just wanted to get that. I just recently got that information today, and I wanted to pass it on.
Okay. Do any of our Zoom attendees have anything they'd like to ask Elise as Linda Hopkins? I don't see any hands. Jason, is there anybody on Facebook with their hand up?
Attendees, if you have a public comment, please raise your hands. No hands are raised and no comments have been posted on Facebook.
Okay. So Elise, will you continue with the first item on the regular calendar? MAC
Yes.
elections and engagement.
Let's talk about engagement with the MACs. We have had the same concern with both MACs, which is the that sometimes we have fewer people in the audience than sometimes we have in the room. I would love to have, after I've told you a few of the thoughts that we have, I would really love it if you guys could think about and give us feedback in terms of what you think might be some possible reasons. But one of the things that I've discovered over the years is that people forget about it or they don't know about it. We have new people coming in. And since we tend, especially during the pandemic, to communicate almost exclusively via social, it means that a lot of people may not be getting full information. And so one of the things that we've done for this fall is we've created, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see it. We've created a couple postcards that we're using some of our MAC budget to send out. Oh, I need to center that a little bit better, don't I? Oh, where did it go? We've created some postcards to send out to all the people within the MAC region, and it will have some information about these common communications things. You would be really surprised. I'm often really surprised at how many people I talk to that call in with some complaints or call in or email into District 5 that don't know we have a MAC, that don't know that we have a YouTube channel, that don't know we have a newsletter. And so, we've created postcards. That's the back side, and here's the front side. So that we're going to send it out to every single household, and that will hopefully bring in some new people that may not have known that it existed, remind the older people that it is still happening, and invite people to participate in the election process for representatives coming up in the fall. So that's one piece of it. A second piece that we were talking about doing was creating a survey. And so we thought that the first piece would be to send out the postcard. And then the second one would be to create a survey to send out, which is along the lines of what would make the MAC meetings, more valuable or more interesting to you to participate in. So again, I'd like to ask you guys, we will send out a question to the representatives here, and we'd like to also invite anyone online to send us an email with questions you think should be asked. Do you think the meetings run too long? Do you think we should have more public comment? Do you think we should have a greater number of panelists? Do you think we should promote the meetings differently? I do know that sometimes what happens is we get something, oftentimes we rely on our representatives. So we also need feedback for our representatives, as we rely on our representatives to communicate within the town. So I always feel concerned when someone who's super active, like Margaret says, I didn't know that there was an opportunity to provide comment, when we went to our representatives and said, go to your community and find out what their comments are on the LCP. So it means that there was a disconnect there. And that happens a lot. So we need to figure out too, if you guys have thoughts in terms of how could I be doing better? How could I be communicating with my community better? Let us know what your possible questions are that could be part of that survey. So I think the third thing that's a big piece that's important is going to be, getting back to meetings where people come, and we have worked quite hard on testing some hybrid meetings, and I hope that we'll be able to get to that soon, so that we'll be able to have both online and in person. So those are our first takes on that. So since Beth had some thoughts on it, and I've thrown out a lot on that on you, I'm going to stop now and see if you guys have thoughts or input on other ideas and suggestions we could have to increase engagement. Paul, your hand's up.
First of all, I want to say that the ideas you have about the survey and the postcard and hybrid meetings, I think they're all very good. And I think they will help. However, I would also like to know, and we might have statistics on this, about past meetings and attendance, the numbers. And it could be that the issues were just a lot juicier, like parking enforcement was, everybody was talking about it, or, the bike rides that take place that didn't take into consideration A and B and C and needed further review. So it could be that just the big issues, I mean, LCP is the biggest issue right now, but there just aren't a lot of issues right now. And so the attendance falls. So it would be interesting to see when there's a lot of issues, is the attendance high? And when there aren't, does the attendance wane? So that's
an
it.
excellent point. And I wonder too, one of the things, and Jason, you would know the answer to this. Can we see how many people view our videos afterwards? Because let's say we have 10 people at the meeting, but 50 people view it afterwards, because that might tell us that the timing's poor, or they just want to watch it in their own time. So let's dive into that too. What do you think, Jason? Can we get those numbers?
Yeah, those numbers are readily available to anyone. If you go to our YouTube page, you can see how many views.
Okay, I'll take a look at that. So we'll do a little research on that aspect too. Thanks so much, Paul. Beth, your input?
Let's hear from Scott first.
Okay, Scott.
I think that COVID and Zoom has kind of played out, and the sooner we can get back to a rotating location in person, I think that'll help a lot. What you were saying, I'm supporting that about. I'm not communicating well. I think my Starlink isn't doing well, is it?
I think you're great. We see you, and,
Okay.
and you're coming through clearly, and you're very sharp
Okay.
against your fuzzy background.
All right, it's just once we get to a in-person which goes from location to location, I think that will generate more interest.
Yep. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, Beth.
So I agree with everything that's been said. I think in person is going to be very, very helpful. I like the postcards. I like, more a forum for the MAC representatives to be having more communication when we're not in meetings. And on that note, I am not technical. Everybody knows this about me. I think it would be helpful if the Coast MAC had a Facebook page like the River MAC does. I think that would be wonderful. And I don't know how to go about doing that. I also think that we need assistance in how to market ourselves. I can't speak for everyone, but I know that most of us have other things going on. I'm still employed full time on top of my civic duties, so that having more assistance in marketing ourselves would be helpful. And I would like to see us have booths at some of the craft and artisan fairs. I think that would be a really great form of engagement. For example, there's one coming up in Bodega on the last weekend of August. That may be something like that. Now, having said that, what people are telling me is that they're not attending the meetings any longer because they had anticipated far more give and take, far more ability to have conversations with us in the forum. And that they're feeling like they don't always get answers. They're not always able to engage with us when we are in the meetings.
And one of the issues around that, which I think we have control over, one issue I don't think we have control over is the Brown Act and the structure, which is frustrating to people. But one thing we do have control over that we have, and I take full responsibility for this, but we do tend to pack the agendas. And so having more room in the agenda, I think would help us be able to give more time for engagement. So that's certainly something to consider. And in terms of the question of being able to do greater outreach, I'd be happy to talk to any of you about if you want to go out and do a table and you need some staff support to do that, we can do that. If you want to set up a mailing list within our system, I'll help you set that up. If you want to post more on the Sonoma Coast MAC Facebook group, which is out there. Happy to help you learn how to do that. So any support you need. See, one of the challenges here, Beth, is you've been a representative only during the pandemic. And we used to encourage and work with representatives to do small group meetings where we would come out and people would go out and have coffee together and meet with their constituents. And that has it's completely stopped. So, again, I encourage everyone here to think about how to, how and where you might want to do such things. We do have a new, I can't believe I didn't do it during Supervisor Hopkins update. We have a new member of our team joining August 9th, Tracy Lyons, and that will enable us to be able to provide a lot more staff support. So, and another Representative Debbie Ramirez is going to be joining us part-time on August 30th. So we will have more time to support you, and we're happy to do so. So let's talk some more on that. And it looks like Jason put the group up in the chat there for you.
So Elise, does the Brown Act allow us to have a give and take conversation in the MAC meeting?
It does. It's the structure is such that you call on somebody and we have a limited time because what we've and you can take the limited time off if you'd like and have it be back and forth. We cannot. So the rules that affect this is if it's public comment that's not on an item on the agenda, we can't answer. So that's just, they give their comment and then that's considered for the agenda. But if you're having a topic like the LCP, it does depend on how many people you have and how much time we have. So when we've had a situation where we have 15 minutes for public comment, we'll set it at 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever, and try to go through everyone. What our first goal is to make sure every single person that wants to make a comment is able to do so. And oftentimes we just manage to get through that before our time is up, which is why I was saying if we have shorter agendas, perhaps we would be able to allow more time for public comment and have more back and forth.
So you can have a conversation as part of the agenda so long as the topic is identified on the agenda.
So long as the topic is identified and so long as you're giving an opportunity for everyone to speak. We have had situations in earlier MACs where we had a couple representatives who are no longer with us, but great representatives who would just go back and forth with the speaker for 15 minutes, and then there wasn't any time for people in the public. So there is a balancing act there that we're trying to do, which is to make sure that we can have some conversation, but also make sure everyone is able to speak. So
okay, I wasn't aware that there was any way to do that at all, so thank you.
Yeah. Ginny?
Yes, thank you for this conversation, because as a new member of the Coastal MAC, I feel at a deficit and not having any training to know the extent of my role, how to play the role, how to be active among our constituents, what are the things I can and cannot do. I really feel that I need either mentoring or training or some kind of rules that I can read and interpret and run that by, so that I can be as effective as possible and add value to the community and to Supervisor Hopkins and the whole team. So I'm looking for that kind of information and guidance to be able to play that role and to engage the community in the way that would benefit everybody.
That's great. I will, I'll go pull up our original training video, and because it would be helpful for us to look at it together and to see what's lacking. What did we miss? Because we do that training every January, and it would be great great to look at that agenda and our training and see what we're lacking so that we can do better this next January. Thank you. Do we have other hands?
And I don't,
Wanda?
Wanda.
Yeah, has anyone taken advantage within the community, not MAC members, of adding to the agenda? Because I believe that that was an adjustment made, I think.
It's
correctly.
incredibly rare.
Yeah, that's okay.
And I think, and that puzzles me, because at the end of every single MAC, we say, what items do you want to have on your agenda? Please recommend to us. So when people say you're not hitting on the interesting enough agenda items, and we're like, tell us what you want us to talk about. So yeah, thank you for highlighting that, because it's super helpful to hear from people what they want to talk about. Thank you. Are there any other questions out there that I'm not seeing, Jason? No.
Are we going to public comment?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about one more thing on this before we go to public okay, go to public comment, and then we'll do the election thing. Okay.
So I don't see any hands among the attendees on Zoom.
We do not have any hands raised on Zoom, and nothing on Facebook.
Great, thank you. So the last thing that you may have seen on the agenda from me today is that we'd like to propose an amendment to the bylaws. The current bylaws state section 3 terms. A membership term is a 2-year period. Let me say that for the Coast MAC, we will not say the River MAC, the Sonoma Coast MAC members may be reappointed. Members may serve a maximum of 2 terms, 4 years in total. Some of the challenges with that is that we are now at that point for many of our volunteers on the MAC. We have, for example, Abby Gomez, who is appointed by the tribe of Kashaya. And if the Kashaya tribe wants to reappoint her, our bylaws would not allow that for that. We would like to change this, because many smaller communities find it difficult to bring together this level of volunteerism. Supervisor Hopkins and the MAC chairs got together to suggest that this bylaws term be updated to say section 3 terms. A membership term is a 2-year period. The Sonoma Coast MAC members may be reappointed. So we'd like to suggest your chairs and Supervisor Hopkins and our team would like to ask for that bylaws update. And in order to do so, we need to have that voted on by the council. So may we have council input on this question? Brian?
How about Scott, if you want to go first?
Okay, Scott?
A 3rd term could be allowed even if there are other people wishing to run.
Well, we will certainly have open selection every single fall. So if there are other people wishing to run, they may run. So everyone may run. We're not prohibiting anyone from running.
So we're simply saying it's not limited to 2 terms.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
And we encourage people to run. We want to have elections and choosing and giving people choice.
Right. That's kind of what I wanted to go, is basically that I think it's a good idea in that I know it was kind of difficult, and I want to thank Ginny for stepping up and for Bodega Bay, but it was difficult to find folks out here in Bodega Bay who wanted to do this. So folks who want to do it for more than 2 terms, God love them. But then also, I think it's, with respect to what Scott was saying earlier, I think it's, we haven't had, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but we haven't had a great number of elections that's come up. So I think that would be exciting, in some ways exciting, if we did have, the level of engagement where people were, multiple people were wanting to do this council.
Right, which is why we were thinking of the postcard, because we did have those postcards immediately. And one of the things that I wish we need to find a better way to communicate is all the work the MAC does that's not in the meeting. You know, you guys really are a voice for your community. And so we hear from, you know, if we hear from Scott saying the Annapolis Yard is a problem in Timber Cove, and we hear from, you know, Brian saying, I've got a constituent asking me about this. And Beth is always bringing up good points about we've got speeding problems in Bodega. And then we come out and we work to address those problems. And so one of the pieces that, and they're not meeting agenda items, right? They're just, you guys give us problems and we work to find solutions through the Bodega Bay, through the Sonoma Coast representatives. And so it's a superbly valuable council, even if we didn't have anybody coming to the meetings, although that's much better if they do. But I'm saying there are multiple reasons why this is such a valuable group for us. Paul, your hand is still up. Is that a new hand or an old hand?
That's my other hand. Yeah, that's a new hand. Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion. I mean, we'll still have discussion, you know, and obviously a attendee discussion, but might as well have a motion out there that we accept the change to the bylaws as proposed, as it relates to the election.
I'd be happy to
election terms.
So did you want to go ahead and, no more discussion? We take a vote or we
Wanda
wait?
has,
No, we need discussion.
Is there any public comment?
Wanda
I'm
has.
sorry, I have a comment, I mean, just to throw this in here, because you may not all remember this, but the Fort Ross area, I mean, we never really had an election. I was not elected. I was sort of handpicked and asked if I would do this. And I found someone else that will do it after me, but that's sort of how we do it out here. And that was approved somehow through this process. So I just wanted to mention that. I mean, somehow if that could be stuck into this change to the bylaws, I suppose. I mean, it might kind of fit with what the Kashire are doing. Perhaps.
Yeah, it's an intriguing thing because the coast has, every little town does it a little bit differently.
Right.
And so Bodega Bay, I know the first time they had a hotly contested election, and that wasn't necessary in later terms, but and in other communities it was a caucus would come together and someone would get appointed. In the Kashaya tribe, someone got appointed. On the River MAC, it's people are adamant that if we do not call it an election and we don't try to have an open election, that it's clear we're corrupt and evil. So no, they're very, very clear that that's important to them. And so across the board down the river, we have openings for elections, but still there are usually only one or two towns that are big enough to have multiple people running, which means that that it is often just a simple appointment process rather than a selection process. So it varies by town to town, and we try to meet the interests and the requirements of each town.
Okay, thanks.
Scott?
Yeah, just to remind you, it's not an election. It's a recommendation to Linda, and she selects from our recommendation. It's a nomination process.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification, Scott. That's really important.
The words are important. I was, yeah.
Okay,
Is there anyone in the public?
John Woodward has his hand up as a panelist. I mean, as an attendee.
So thank you, Scott, with the question that you or the statement that you made that it actually their nominations, then that Linda would actually be the appointer. That's what I was very concerned about is, you know, really what would be the mechanism that would be most equitable and fair to everybody. That no, you're not an evil group, but again, I would hate to have cronyism actually get into a group such as good as this, though. So it's just a statement, but thank you very much for actually clarifying that, though.
That is super important, John, and we are really eager with this pandemic. It's been quite an issue because we are really eager to continue to go back to having our individual town caucuses and in-person meetings and town halls. And if any of you at any time, back to that question of what we can do, if, you know, Scott at one point said, we want to have some Timber Cove meetings, and he put together the nonprofit groups and the community leaders and the fire groups, and Linda and I came up and we had a full day or full afternoon of meetings with these various people. So, you know, if you want to, if your town or community is ready for such a thing, we could put together an outdoor meeting, and feel free to call on us to do so. We want to be as open and communicative as possible.
Yeah,
Is
thank
there
you.
anyone else in the public?
Jason, is there anybody on Facebook?
I am not seeing any comments on Facebooks, and we don't have any hands raised in our Zoom attendees.
Okay,
Great.
so I
we
think
have-
it's time to call the question.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
already have a motion and a second.
Right.
So let me take a roll call to approve the changes. So Beth,
Aye.
Scott,
I,
Marty,
I,
Paul,
Aye.
Wanda.
I,
I guess Liz hasn't made it. Brian
Aye.
and Ginny.
Aye.
Okay, approved.
okay, great. So moving on to the LCP section, Leo Chi is going to lead this part of the discussion. Leo is among his many other duties, he's the point person on Linda's staff for Permit Sonoma, and he has been following the LCP and Permit Sonoma's conducting of the activities around it for several years. And so he's going to update us on the process as it exists now. And then we'll lead the discussion of issues that members of the MAC and the public may want to discuss about the LCP as it stands now. Leo, we're very grateful to have you here, and thank you for all the attention you've been paying to the LCP over the last few years.
Thanks. I see Wanda has her hand up. Marty, do you want to go to Wanda first?
Yes. Yeah.
was I asleep, or did we approve the minutes from last time already?
Yes, we approved them at the very
Oh.
beginning.
Rats, I did miss that then. I had a couple corrections. I could do it via email, or would that be
Yeah.
better? I mean, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I didn't realize that was.
Actually,
approved.
Wanda, why don't you bring them up in the meeting just so it's public quickly and I
Okay.
can jot them, if that's
And
okay,
And
Marty.
it's not, I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
It was just on page 8, and it was talking about the Coast Collaborative. Just that they started talking in 2017 after the Tubbs fire, not the Creighton Ridge fire. That was
Oh, okay.
the Tubbs fire.
Got it.
And then there was just a little typo, Coast Ridge with an R and not, that was on page 9. Coast Ridge with an R and not Bridge with a B. So
Okay, got it.
sorry about that. Thank you very much.
No.
Yeah, thank you.
Take it, Leo.
Cindy, you do a
Okay.
wonderful job.
I'm sorry.
Cindy does such a great job. I just can't stop saying that.
Thank you.
Yes, and I second that. Cindy is a miracle.
Don't make me don't make me blush. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Tyler.
I'm trying to snooze all the annoying alerts that have been just starting to go off because I unmuted. So it's always that way. But thanks for having me. Yeah, so we've got the local coastal plan up today, and I thought that it would make sense, since Permit Sonoma wasn't able to join us for this meeting, that I can help kind of frame and lay out kind of the timeline for where we are and highlight some of the resources that are available. And I can also share some of the preparation that Elise did with the MAC and me, along with Permit Sonoma staff, in advance of this meeting today. So let's see, I think a lot of you may have already seen this, but I'll do a little bit of a share screen here, just to highlight that while I think that the resources that Permit Sonoma has online can continue to use some improvement, that they have heard our repeated demands that they create a better landing page for the local coastal plan and to assist people in finding the information that they're seeking. So this is the main new landing page that went live, I think in May or June. And it is a single sort of location where people can get information and find the files that they're looking for. I'm gonna go ahead and paste that into the chat so that people can bookmark it. But I think at this point now it does come up when you Google LCP as the first item that comes up, which is great. So here, let me just take a moment and put it right into the chat. So I won't spend a ton of time in here because you all know how to use the internet and you're here, but I did want to just highlight that they have the May version of the local coastal plan update as the first thing at the top of the page. C. Higgins has been really good about asking Permit Sonoma to make sure that they're going to produce an updated version that reflects the final June 29th version of the LCP that the Planning Commission decided to move forward to the board. And I've been told that, you know, they did incorporate some of a lot of the feedback that she and some others had given. So for anybody who wants to see information about those hearings or access the package, the link here to the June 29th meeting gets you to the agenda for that meeting. And then that's where I usually go in order to access the different files that were made available for that page. So here on all of their agenda items, they have view documents for all items listed digitally. And so when you go there, you end up in this file structure kind of a page that they seem to have for all of their meetings, and you can find their agenda. They have all of the elements in the most updated format in the elements here. And when they do put up the updated version, hopefully 30 days before the Board of Supervisors hears their meeting, so hopefully late July, we'll be able to see that information posted in this location as well. Just to highlight in here, I know that public comments is a major concern that people on the MAC have had. And so in their public comment folder, they do have a series of documents that include a table where I find it pretty useful. This table is, if I'm clicking on the right one, it's a 461 page document where they tried to capture all of the comments that people had submitted. And I understand that it's probably extremely small on your screen, so you'll want to look at it later, but you can access it through that page. And there's information about what LCP section things are in. So sometimes that's enumerated with like specific numbers showing specific details about it. And then there's notations about the comments there. But if you don't want to wade through this document and you want to just kind of get the high level of what was done, they have a staff report that I think is the most useful for kind of understanding what changes were made. So that's in the, let me see where it is. I think it's in here. So it's this staff item at the bottom there, and that one, they, again, they had a lot of work, so there are some slightly confusing errors in terms of the dates and stuff, but this was part of the June 29th packet, even though it says July on some of the pages. And it includes the entire timeline and when they covered specific topics during different planning commission meetings. So if somebody wanted to go back, for example, you could see the dates for when specific planning commission meetings were when they heard those specific elements. And so you could go back and reference what was happening there. And then after the timelines in this document, they do go into sort of what they did to sort of reflect public feedback and changes that needed to be made. I'm not going to go into depth at all on this, but I think that one key thing that Elise and I both thought was really important is that unlike this time around, when it was decades since the last update, the Planning Commission wants to see the update happening every 5 years. So essentially, right now, this is the process to get the local coastal plan approved. So the next step would be the board approval, which is scheduled for August. If they approve it, then I believe they're hoping to get the Coastal Commission to approve it in the fall of this year. And then after that are the other components of the local coastal plan. So they'll have to create their administrative rules and do any of that zoning work to implement the policies that would be in the planning, the local coastal plan itself. So for me, it's always tempting to want to see every sort of detail and every piece in the policy document, but it's important just to remember that they do have those additional follow-on documents that are going to basically codify and create the regulations that these policies are dictating. So it's an ongoing process, and you know, we've been joking that as soon as they're done with that, it's going to be definitely the time to immediately start the next phase of the LCP in terms of getting the new policies for the 5-year timeline in place. I think the one other key thing I wanted to share is that I know that there were people who were disappointed that Permit Sonoma wasn't able to join today. And, you know, I think, you know, I'm not here to represent them, I'm just trying to convey sort of my experience working with them. And I can see it both ways. I mean, they are quite swamped. They have a person who's out on leave, who's key in their planning division, and they are, you know, really trying hard to get their updated document available so that people will have 30 days before the board hearing to review that. And, you know, they have a lot of work to do. Additionally, I didn't get to, I was going to mention it in this, in the kind of staff update later, but if you look at the board calendar for August and September, there are a tremendous number of Permit Sonoma related items. So I definitely understand that they have a large workload. When Elise and I communicated with them about sort of the disappointment that people had that a manager from Permit Sonoma wasn't going to be able to attend, what Elise and I basically, in the course of our conversation, we said that we would work with the MAC to collect some of the key unresolved issues that they wanted to have raised, because this meeting, like when Marty and I talked in May, was to help inform the board after the commission had already moved forward their motion. And so we wanted to know if there was, you know, additional things that the board should focus on or be aware of. And so Elise worked with the MAC on that process and collected some key questions. And then we did get an answer, a written response from Permit Sonoma to a lot of those questions. And we made those available just today, since this was happening last minute. If somebody on my team could put that document into the chat, we've posted it on our website, and we'll also, we provided it to the MAC members today. Here, let me pull up that document. So basically, I'll just, again, I won't walk you through the whole document. I encourage you to take a look at it after the meeting, either download it and take your time looking it over, or you can, if for some reason you can't download it, you can always email district5@sonoma-county.org and we will email it to you. But basically, the collected questions are in black, and the responses that came via Scott Orr at Permit Sonoma are in blue, and he worked with his team to get us the answers. And Elise and I talked about kind of the categorization of how we could kind of think about the answers. So there's some things that are simple, like corrections, for example. So Scott Farmer pointed out that there's a reference to El Molino when El Molino is not currently serving high school students that are currently all going to Annalee or West County. So it's something that they will be able to correct. So things that are like of that nature, they're going to, Permit Sonoma has the ability to make those kind of technical corrections in the document itself. There's other places where, I know that community members have felt that they either were frustrated that Permit Sonoma was either unresponsive or didn't agree with them. And so Elise and I in the meeting said, we really want to encourage you to just be clear with people. Don't say you'll consider it if it's something that they've heard but disagree or believe the policy can't be implemented. We encourage them to just say that. And if it's something that they don't disagree with, but just didn't have bandwidth to handle, that we ask that they just sort of recognize that so that people can just have as much clarity as they're able and willing to provide. Wanted to also flag that there are some items that people raise that are going to be sort of part of a separate process. So I think a good example for that is vacation rentals. So vacation rentals is going to be kind of handled in a parallel process and not as much like fully captured within this LCP document. So yeah, so I think overall, like I'm really impressed at how consistently engaged everybody has been in the community. And when people were asking about levels of engagement, I mean, there have been a tremendous number of different meetings that Permit Sonoma has held, and they've released as I showed you, like hundreds of pages of those comments that they have compiled and, at least have indicated which section those things are addressed. So that's kind of where we are right now. I would really encourage that once we see the new version that will show sort of all the modifications made after the June 29th meeting, that's the version that'll go to the board for approval. And then if all of you have specific feedback for the Board of Supervisors, you can certainly always write to the BOS@sonoma-county.org. For any official agenda items, when you write to that address, the clerk of the board makes sure that all 5 board members' offices receive that correspondence as part of the record. So you're welcome to do that. I know some of you often write in directly to Permit Sonoma, and I think that's fine as well, as long as you do it in time that it's included into the packet if you want it shown in the packet. But you can always up to the day of, or up to the day of, you can write to BOS@sonoma-county.org with your feedback. In terms of process, I would personally recommend really picking your priorities, because I think that for the board to get into the weeds and if they were to make a significant change that would send it back to the Planning Commission, it would need to be something that was really meriting that level of interest and concern. So I encourage all of you to share your feedback and how if it's something that's that important to you. Of course, we want to make sure that Linda hears it and all of the other board members as well, because it is going to need to be a majority of the board member that decide to move it forward. So I'll stop screen sharing. Sorry, I didn't really scroll through this whole document, but it's a 9-page document that basically captures a lot of key questions that some of our MAC members offered us, and then the responses from Permit Sonoma. So I understand that you can't really read it when it's on the screen, but definitely pull it and take a look and see if it's useful for you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share. All right. So Marty, would you like to go first? And you could either facilitate this portion or I can do it. I'm happy to have it either way. And I can.
You're muted, Marty.
I'll go first because my comment is in kind of umbrella comment, and then I'll call on people whose hands are up. My comment is, Leo, since you have this longstanding relationship with Permit Sonoma, and I'm sure many members of the public would really appreciate it if you would encourage them to try harder to meet their deadline for releasing the documentation. As Scott Orr pointed out in his responses to our questions, they were supposed to have the document for the last Planning Commission meeting out by the end of May. And parts of the document dribbled in beginning about the end of the first week in June. And the last substantive sections weren't posted until 2 days before the June 29th meeting. And it's really hard if you're trying to keep up with a document of this scope and be sure you know what's in there when there are only 2 days before a major meeting to review it. Also, the documentation they provided for the last meeting of the Planning Commission, they did not, as at least we didn't find a red line showing the changes. The changes were so massive compared to the 2019 version that I understood why they probably couldn't provide a red line. I don't believe there are going to be that many changes after the Planning Commission meeting. I attended 3/4 of it. I gave out at 6 o'clock. And I don't know how long they went on. But if they could provide that red line, that would, or at least a list of the important sections that they changed, that would be really helpful. Okay.
And just to read from a message in a back and forth that I had with Gary Helfrich, he said, there are no substantive changes recommended by the Planning Commission to May 2022 Planning Commission draft. There will be cleanup of typos and internal references, of course, and cartography on the figures will be improved. Finally, there will be additions to the glossary to define all terms used in the LCP. And then he says, I've attached the staff memo from the final PC meeting outlining most of the changes, which I did go to. I made sure and find that it was posted and available, and it is, which is a useful crosswalking document. And he said the Planning Commission also reviewed a comment letter from Rue, and most of her recommendations attached, shown in yellow, were recommended by the Planning Commission. So he shared with me that document as well. And Rue was specifically mentioned because I think she initiated some of the conversation that was starting this thread. And, you know, she really emphasized the importance of having the changes so that people would have 30 days. And I weighed in as well. And they will do their best, but yeah, I'm hoping they will be able to do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Beth, I think you were the first hand up.
Thank you. I have 2 quick comments. I'll go with the quickest one first. I know that the gravel mining, particularly the Cheney Gulch mine, is coming up repeatedly and is a concern to people. I want everyone that is concerned about that to know that it would be over $1 million just to get the paperwork in place to get those mines out reopened, those gravel pits reopened. I know this because 2 of them sit on my property and I would drop dead before I'd open them under any circumstances, but somebody'd have to be throwing a lot of money at them to get it open. I just don't see it. The Roblar pit, they've been working on opening that for 20 years. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say is regarding vacation rentals. This is far more important. It is my understanding, and if someone here in the room can correct me if I'm wrong, I really want to hear this, but anything regarding vacation rentals must be in the LCP, except for Sea Ranch. Sea Ranch is a carve out. But everything else, if it's in the local coastal zone, then anything that's going to, in any fashion, regulate or rein in the vacation rentals must be in this document. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
I think you're wrong.
Oh, good.
Leo,
I can-
correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding and Leo, you look like you're champing at a bit.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm trying to get it right because I know that that has been definitely the topic of confusion. And I think some original information that Permit Sonoma provided, I think it did change over time. I mean, they've been talking to the Coastal Commission about, for example, the details related to having a licensing program. So, you know, I believe that we expect the vacation rental item on August 2nd to include the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that for the non-coastal areas that a program where there's a business license be implemented. And I think in the past, it sounded like they thought they could do that in the coast as well, but they cannot. But there is a process that they are going through that could result in them being able to do that. And so they are, I believe, working on getting approval from the Coastal Commission for a modification to the local coastal program, which would then allow them to have the ability to go through a process to roll out the vacation rental business license in the coast. But there would still be a process. It's a goal of Permit Sonoma and I think the board to align the coast policies with the rest of the county whenever it's possible to reduce confusion, but there are separate processes that would be moving forward. So that was kind of a messy answer. I think it's sort of maybe in between. It's not as straightforward that it has to be in the local coastal plan that is currently being approved, but it does need to be part of the overall program that is approved by the Coastal Commission.
Okay,
Does
so-
that help make things less
Well,
confusing or more
well,
confusing?
my
Yes.
understanding from the Planning Commission discussion of vacation rentals, which was about a month ago, was that they were expecting the administrative aspects of regulating vacation rentals to be the same for the coastal areas as for the internal parts of the county, but they did not expect the Coastal Commission to approve density restrictions in the coastal areas, and that it would not be in our local coastal plan, but the coastal area vacation rental program would be a subsequent effort that would be undertaken by Permit Sonoma, and that we would all have the opportunity to comment on it outside the local coastal plan approval process. But everything's changing, and that may not be current, even though it was a month ago.
Okay, so I guess my confusion in this is that I get that they're thinking of putting it in the local coastal program, but isn't the local coastal program the functional arm, the implementation arm of the local coastal plan? And this is good that this is coming up right now, because I think there's a lot of confusion on this, and we may want to address this very specific issue separately.
I think that makes sense. I mean, Beth, right? Like the way that Permit Sonoma seems to usually talk about the local coastal program, it's the local coastal plan followed by the sort of administrative policies and the zoning, right, that reflect those policies. So you're right, like that matches what I was just saying, that it should be matching the policies that are in place. You shouldn't have policies that say one thing and then you would somehow adjust the plan for something contradictory. I think that what I was saying is happening right now is to, I think they're working to, in order for them to be able to do the licensing part, which isn't changing the availability or presence of the vacation rentals in whatever numbers they're on in the coastal zone. It's to make the program sort of, I think, reflect that they are there, and then that would allow them to do the business license as a way to have operating standards and other pieces in place. But I don't think they could do that in a way that would be sort of a de facto like policy making rule where they didn't, provide the licenses, for example, to some number as a way to make policy. I don't think that that's at all on the table or the goal or appropriate. It's just trying to be able to implement the business license in terms of the way that they're doing this. I think any other policy proposals, and even what Marty was reflecting the Planning Commission saying, I think might be their sort of intentions about where they could see it going. But I think those things would need approvals in the future in a formal.
Yes,
Yes.
and that's what they said.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Scott?
Leo, from your presentation, it sounds like they have, Permit Sonoma has a way of capturing comments on the timeline. And I assume that will remain in place after the LCP is approved, final. And it gives us an opportunity the day after it's approved, especially with a 5-year renewal cycle, that things that we aren't really satisfied with or suggestions or comments, we can start posting those to that program the day after it's approved and log it so that when we approach the time where we're actually commenting, these things are in the record, public record. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure how that, I think it's a SharePoint site. That's what that's called. I think you could certainly submit into the record. I'm just thinking about process right now. The next step is it's going to the Board of Supervisors. So those things, those comments will potentially be received directly by the board. And I don't know if they automatically get posted. I think that we would want Permit Sonoma to sort of weigh in on what their actual process is in terms of their keeping all of those records and having those things publicly available, because that's not as though you can just put your comments up there. Like somebody manually included all of the comments, and they probably had some strict legal requirements about when things had to be in order to be posted. And so I would want Permit Sonoma to say sort of what their process would be for having any sort of future records. But that said, if you send it to the BOS@sonoma-county.org email, then it will at least be in the records that those came in and were sent to all the board members. But I don't know how those get archived or not.
Yes. So then what I was thinking doesn't really exist. So I would suggest that there be a Permit Sonoma place that we can go in for the LCP and say, okay, this item could be better in X, Y, and Z way, and post it. And that creates a library of comments and suggestions that can inform our next round of these public comments and suggestions before we renew it in 5 years.
I mean, I think there is so much public process that, I think you could get stuff recorded for the board hearing. And then I believe you could also submit the comments, in advance of the Coastal Commission hearing the items. So those are two places where that information can be recorded. And my guess is that if you sent it into Permit Sonoma and asked them to, file it with this project, that they must have some internal mechanism of doing that. But I wouldn't want to speak to what exactly that is. I mean, overall, we've really
referring to the next cycle.
What's that?
I'm referring to the next 5-year cycle, which we're going to start here in a number of months, maybe 6 months.
Sure.
Anyhow, enough said. That's just an idea. I'd also ask Marty if, when we get to public comments, if we could open it up for a little more discussion rather than just comment. I think there's some people that might like that. So I'll stop talking so we have more time for then. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands among the MAC members, so we'll go to the attendees. And Richard Charter and Margaret Graham have their hands up. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out not having any time limit, but ask both Mr. Charter and Ms. Graham to use your judgment about allowing enough time for people to be able to respond to you, and also for additional members of the public to be able to speak. So don't go on for 30 minutes or I'll cut you off. So I think Richard Charter had his hand up first.
Chair, before we do that, are we going to allow back and forth, or should the commenter complete their comment and then that would be the end?
Well, I don't think the MAC members should interrupt the commenter while they're commenting. So I think they ought to make their comment. And if they want a response from somebody on the MAC roster, they should say so. And if they do, we'll try to respond. And if they don't, we'll go on to the next person. Does that make sense, Jason?
Yes.
I know that's not precise, but
We're limiting it to comment and not a back and forth discussion. I'm just wondering when I need to be able to turn someone's mic off.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
If that's
Great.
okay. And I realize that that's abnormal, but I feel like it's important to be abnormal on this
Sure.
issue. And I'll watch the clock. And if you're among the attendees and you think you're going to make a comment, it would be really helpful if you could raise your hand. So I'll know how many people want to comment, and I can let the people who do want to comment talk longer than 2 or 3 minutes if they need to. Okay, that said, we'll start with Mr. Charter.
Thank you very much. My name is Richard Charter, and I live at Wrights Beach on the Sonoma Coast. As you know, it's the only accessible navigable harbor on this coast. Bodega Bay was the prime target for a large industrial facility to support federal offshore oil and gas drilling then planned near our Sonoma Coast beaches during the 1980s. Big companies like Shell, BP, and Chevron wanted to industrialize our bay. For this reason, our local coastal plan has since wisely required a vote of the electorate should any such oil facility be proposed here. Now we find that Bodega Bay is once again on the map of what are now the offshore wind companies of Shell, BP, and Equinor, formerly Statoil, who are among the offshore oil/wind companies now seeking to site potential shoreline industrial facilities to bring a subsea electrical power cable from vast offshore wind arrays to our north onshore into a large shoreline substation to connect with an overland high voltage transmission line to the San Francisco Bay Area. The potential right-of-way for such a transmission line remained active after the Bodega Bay nuclear power plant was stopped, crossing the Estero Americano and routed through Marin. Here's the thing. Our present LCP update process offers us a one-time opportunity to similarly keep our local control over subsea cable landfalls, onshore industrial substations, and power transmission lines that can ultimately result from this fall's pending federal offshore wind leases off of Humboldt County and likely within a year off of Mendocino County. Ensuring our local control is not a step to oppose offshore wind energy development that will inevitably be occurring on the North Coast. That ship has sailed. but our present LCP update is our best and only feasible opportunity to keep the future of Bodega Bay and the rest of the Sonoma Coast under local stewardship here at the county level. Thank you for your service on the MAC. Our coast looks the way it does today because of the people who cared, who worked in the past to keep it this way. Thank you.
Paul, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, it sounds like, Mr. Charter, that what you're really asking for is the LPC, the new LPC, include the same language that a vote of the electorate would be necessary for, what you were describing, the new type of facility. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it could be done with, as far as we understand it from our advisors, it could be done with something as simple as a sentence of about 5 words.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. And I know that your comment has been submitted to Permit Sonoma. They are aware of it, and Scott Orr has responded to that in the memo that's now posted on the MAC website. So I should suggest that you go and look at what he said. And if you're not in concert with that, that you let the Board of Supervisors know before the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Thank you, and I appreciate your attention to this.
Okay.
I'll also go ahead and just paste it into the chat. It's easier to read if you download the document, but for people who are staying in this one window, I'll go ahead and just put it in as well.
Okay, thank you, Leo. Beth?
I just want to say I fully support Mr. Charter's position. I think we need to all be aware that the coast we have today, what we're doing on the coast today, it may in fact become a very different coast in 10 years. And we need to put that protection in place now to make sure that we don't end up with power facilities outside here and going through our stunning, special and fragile environment.
Thank you, Beth. Scott?
Would the election be statewide or county-wide?
It calls presently on offshore oil facilities for a countywide vote. It was actually put in place by a countywide vote that passed by a very wide margin. For offshore wind, I believe it, in our case, since we are on the way, where there are maps currently circulating at the California Energy Commission, we are on the way. If they choose a subsea landfall for an offshore cable, we're on the way to the Bay Area. It's just would go right through here. It's can't go in the Golden Gate because of tidal scour and other issues. It either goes through Bodega Bay or Tavalis Bay. And so it'd be a countywide vote.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And I think the other person with the hand up is Margaret Graham.
Thank you, Chair Campbell and the rest of the members. I would like to once again reiterate my concerns around visitor serving development in the LCP update. The goal in this section is to encourage public access and visitor serving uses in the coastal zone and establish adequate commercial services for visitors in the Sonoma County coast, where such development can be accommodated with minimal impacts on views and natural resources. The supporting objective states to identify and develop new or expand existing commercial services for visitors in urban service areas and rural communities. The LCP update has 17 different policies to encourage visitor serving development. These policies reflect recommendations developed in the 1980 LCP, and there have been no meaningful updates to them in the subsequent 40 years. In the LCP update, there is no consideration of the validity then or now of the 1980 recommendations. There's no consideration of what is true now in this sector, let alone any consideration for the next 20 years. And there is no active engagement with the stakeholders in this sector. This can be illustrated by the absurdity of some of these policies. For example, supporting development of a public horse stable at Stillwater Cove Ranch, a family-owned ranch not open to the public with no desire for equestrian activities. An expansion limitation for Timber Cove Inn because a disgruntled community member did not like how it was managed back in 1980. Furthermore, 9 of their 17 policies directly refer to a particular business, not land use, such as Ocean Cove Store, Ocean Cove Resort, Timber Cove Boat Landing, Fort Ross Store. 9 businesses singled out amongst all the businesses in the Sonoma Coastal Zone. 9 businesses that are serving the needs of our visitors and residents, as well as being local employers. After I provided repeated objections to the LCP overstepping their authority around referring to specific businesses, PRMD recommended the removal of all policies referring to a business. The Planning Commission voted to override this. I understand the fear that development in the coastal zone will damage the natural environment. I really do. For this reason, any development must conform to stringent regulations around such things as appropriate zoning, climate change impacts, and environmentally sensitive habitats. This is a given for any development. But the local coastal plan has no authority to regulate a specific business or operation. Therefore, I have requested the removal of any policy referring to a specific business. I've also requested that the entire objective C-L-LU-5.1 be removed until a thorough and relevant review of this sector is done, including meaningful engagement and collaboration with stakeholders, not just a cut and paste of the 1980 LCP. Our communities deserve more. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Does anybody else have a comment to make about this? Well, and Paul and then me. Paul?
Just that I think Margaret should definitely bring this issue before the board, the Board of Supervisors when they discuss this in August. You know, I'm not familiar with, you know, the 17 policies that relate to specific businesses. But in general, I would agree, specific businesses, which may have been the only businesses 42 years ago, you know, out there or in these rural areas, that it's a mistake to do that generally. Again, I don't know what each of the 17 say, but you know, in general, I support what she's saying. An LCP shouldn't be that specific down to the business level, because then it leaves other businesses out. So yeah, thank you, Margaret, for your comments.
And I'd like to add my thanks, Margaret, for your comments. And I would also encourage you to take this to the Board of Supervisors. One of those business opportunities that's included in the LCP is a remark about development on Annapolis Road. And that's in our region, and we don't know what that means, because there isn't, I mean, there isn't any place to do that. So I would encourage you to submit that to the Board of Supervisors for their consideration. Then Brian and Scott and Margaret, did you want to comment? Back, or is your hand still up from the beginning?
Oh, it's still up. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian and then Scott.
Right. I know there are in Bodega Bay, there's at least one business that is specifically mentioned. And I don't have a position about that specific business. But I personally thought it was weird that that specific business was in there. To me, the local coastal plan should be a matter of sort of policy rather than specific sort of that fine grain of or particular interest. I think with respect to the one that is in Bodega Bay, I think the policy, the remarks that were about it could be perhaps a little bit controversial, but I think would probably be much better dealt with at the planning commission level rather than in sort of a 20-year time frame document that it is currently in right now. So without going into whether I agree with, the specifics of in other regions or, with the ones that Margaret highlighted, but I think it is strange that there are so many specific business listed in the LCP.
Okay, thank you. Scott and then Paul.
Yeah, I think I agree with Margaret. It doesn't have its place to be presented the way it is, identifying businesses. And Permit Sonoma felt that way. And the Planning Commission, in talking about it, was really teetering either way, and finally decided that they would leave it as it was. So I think it's definitely worth the board considering this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the place on Annapolis, I think it's 1,000 Annapolis, and it's just a row of offices.
Oh, yeah,
That's it.
right. Okay, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. Scott sort of answered it in my question, that was the Planning Commission was teetering on this. But Margaret, do you get a sense, your own interpretation, do you get a sense of why the Planning Commission decided to leave this in when PRMD was suggesting removing it?
Yeah, because I watched the Planning Commission hearings around this, obviously. And I think essentially there's a lot of people in this area that see development as a dirty word. And so want to do anything to shut down any possible development, regardless. The discussions with the Planning Commission around this specifically, they realized and recognized that it was not, LCP did not have the authority to specify a specific business, but they could not work out how to target these same operations without using a business name, because it's not land use. And so it shouldn't be there. But they still wanted to have this control. I've got no idea why over these specific businesses. But they just wanted to make sure that there was no chance of development at all, even though the other safeguards are in place, the regulations are in place.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Scott, did you raise your hand again?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Paul, along the same lines. My sense in that meeting that the strongest proponent for having it stay there had history from when it was put in the document and seemed to be hanging on to something. That's it.
Okay, I don't see any other hands among the attendees. Jason, are there any hands on the Facebook?
We do not have anyone on Facebook.
Okay, thank you. And I'd encourage everybody who's interested in the LCP to continue following what's happening. And it appears that the last public meeting will be when the draft is presented to the Board of Supervisors on August 30th. There are mechanisms to be notified by email of when something is coming up on the agenda, and I would encourage you to take advantage of that. And if you don't know how to do that, send me an email at my MAC address, which is on our website. Thank you, and thank you, Leo, for your input and for following this so closely. Now we have several reports from our ad hoc committees. The first is the water ad hoc. Paul?
Thank you, Marty. Well, there was a big delay by me in getting the survey out, but it is out. We're still collecting the data. We did actually get data for some of the smaller water agencies that are they are under the umbrella of Russian River Utilities. So they'd be Carmet, Jenner, Salmon Creek, Sereno, and West Beach. And it's interesting that a lot of the data is very consistent that with the small water systems, and that STRs, they indicated that, you know, short-term rentals are having an effect on water usage. Unfortunately, the survey doesn't quantify how much, so we need to go back and find out. And all of them were indicating that buying water is potentially would be required. So as we continue to collect this information, I think by September, we're going to be, you know, right in, if we're going to be in drought season, it's going to be right then. And we're going to potentially be able to talk to some of these small water agency administrators to find out how things are going this year. Everyone, though, big and small, they communicate the necessity for conservation during drought and high usage periods. So everyone is doing that. Everyone is going out to homeowners and indicating we're in a drought situation. Here's what you can do to conserve water. So we'll have more information and perhaps even some discussion at the next MAC meeting, I'm hoping.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the water ad hoc? Scott?
Yeah, the LCP has a lot of new things about water. Will you start folding that into your duties to sort of understand that? I know that some of our wells, new wells, they're asking us to start metering them or to monitor them, for example.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear again from the water agency administrators, what effect does that have on their utility? Yeah. So yeah, the water ad hoc subcommittee will be meeting again, and we can start talking about these issues too.
So just to add on, I think there's the change in how groundwater has been regulated over the last 18 months, I think is pretty substantial. So I think there's probably, I would imagine over the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to be a lot more substantial. So I think maybe some of these smaller agencies aren't at this point able to predict where that's going, or have a handle on that when where those the groundwater regulations start coming through more fully. So I think it is probably behooves us as a committee when we go through this, but then also maybe when we ultimately, I mean, I know Paul and I have discussed sort of maybe a program for a future MAC meeting, and that would certainly be a good topic of discussion about how they envision future groundwater regulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there, Wanda?
Yeah, Paul, and this is referring to something that is new, I think, in the LCP, that said that that is going to be required that any water trucked in be tracked and reported to the county. As far as you know, is that not happening now with these agencies?
I don't have that information. Brian, do you have a sense of what's happening now? How water gets tracked when it's brought into the county?
That's brought in from outside of the county.
Well, or just brought in and because supply, is limited. I mean, Paul, you made reference to that was going to be.
Oh, the trucking and stuff.
Trucking, yeah, water, wherever it's coming from, that it's.
Beth actually probably has a pretty good idea of it, but a lot of it, I mean, I know where ours in Serenado Del Mar is coming from, which is the Cassinis.
Right.
The Cassini, near the river.
Right.
Beth, did you have anything to add on that?
The only thing that I have to add is that I don't know that there is a mechanism in place to track everything coming and going, but you have to, I believe, have an approved water source to be selling the water. So, if I wanted to loan my neighbor 500 gallons of water and truck it down the street, there's nothing that says I can't. Right. So, but I think it's more that those sources that can sell the water are, those are tracked. And if somebody out there has better information than me on that, that's great. I'd love to hear it. But I know there's talk about keeping tight tabs on all of this. I just don't know that the legal pieces are there yet.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Good. Are there any attendees who have a question about water? Was that just?
Margaret does.
Oh, okay, Margaret.
Thank you. I was just, I heard Elise talk about one water district was able to get a grant for smart water meters. And I wonder if your water group could actually help find similar grants for other water districts.
We will definitely.
Elise has her hand up. Her physical hand. Oh my God.
You mind if I jump in, Paul?
Please do. Sounds like you have information.
Since we had such a light agenda, we're having a lot more conversation. I think that we're learning from this. This was brought up, the concept of water and drought was brought up in our request for agenda items and became this committee. And one of the things that we have learned in this process is how much these tiny water organizations throughout the county, not just along the coast, have a real lack of capacity for doing things like getting grants and things like that, because they're just trying to run their business. And there isn't any coordination between them when there is a drought, so unless there's something like they know, okay, now I've got the Kashaya tribe, for example, knew last year they were going to have to start buying water. And so they started reaching out to other water systems. So one of the goals that we had in putting together this committee was hopefully starting a convening program where we bring them together. And this is one of the things that they asked us. They said, what would be super helpful for us would be if we could just get together and talk about water issues and talk about possible cross system solutions, and then we could go in and get grants where we could have 5 or 6 of us all together, or 2 or 3 of us together going in for a grant in order to expand our capacity. So and I would hope, one of my hopes, although I'm not sure that will come through, but one of my hopes is to be able to bring extra capacity from out of county resources to be able to support grant writing and grant research and all that sort of stuff. If we convene the groups and get good questions and good recommended solutions, then there's something we can really get behind and help bring to life. So that was at least my vision. I'm not sure, Paul, as head of the committee, is, I don't know, do you share that vision? Is that what you're thinking as well?
Well, we haven't gotten that far at all, but I think the issue of what grants are out there, especially as you said, for small water utilities, that definitely could be something we can discuss, and we probably will invite you, at least, to our meeting, only because you may have some information about such grants that exist out there.
Yep.
Someone like Sea Ranch. I mean, Sea Ranch has a 100 million gallon reservoir plus very, very large storage tanks. But their agreement that they signed several years ago, they can't sell water. So even though the board a year or so ago was going to sell water when somebody asked, the reality, they didn't need to, but the reality was they couldn't. So it's very interesting what the contracts are like for different utilities.
It's interesting because I do know that Jenner water gets sold, and oftentimes because we get calls from constituents saying we saw so-and-so coming and stealing our water. And that was something that was actually a contract that Jenner had approved and that was paid for, and that was agreed upon only after ensuring that there was enough water at that time. So I do know that Jenner does sell water, and I guess you're right. Each water system has something a little bit different.
Right.
Okay.
I think this all would be a really interesting program too. They have a roundtable with the water systems managers.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Totally want to do it.
Okay. Moving on to the roads ad hoc. The roads ad hoc is composed of Beth Bruzzoni, Annie Cresswell, Carolyn Madden, and myself. We held our first meeting. Annie and I will be co-chairing this ad hoc. And after a preliminary meeting with County Roads Division staff, we'll be reaching out to each area with an action plan so we can get to work gathering information in a consistent way across all the areas, and in a way that the Roads Division will be able to easily use it for their purposes. So keep an eye out for a request coming from our ad hoc, probably for the next meeting. So are there any council members who want to make any general comments before I ask for agenda items?
Oh, what about land use?
I'm sorry?
Land use? Is there a report for land? Oh, no, that's.
Oh, there wasn't a land use meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Between our last meeting and today.
Yeah, so we did not have a meeting. We canceled it. We were originally going to have a meeting in Jenner, but the project we were going to have a meeting on was canceled. So if anybody has items of concern, land use wise, specific projects, please let me know.
Okay, are there any other comments from the MAC members? Are there any agenda items that people would, Leo?
Marty, before you jump onto agenda items, I just wanted to take just a brief moment to flag, I alluded to it earlier, but especially since we were just talking about land use, I just wanted to flag the number of things that are coming up on the board calendar that might be of interest, especially the land use ones. And the calendar of significant items gets attached to the end of most agendas. So if you want to see the upcoming plan for the rest of the year, you can pull any of the board agendas and just scroll all the way toward the end, and usually you'll see it there. But the relevant items that I'll flag are on August 2nd. There's a plan for the board to hear about the short-term rental ordinance, comprehensive revisions to the vacation rental ordinance to address concentration, operation, and entitlement, permitting versus licensing. And as we discussed earlier, that's not applicable to the coast, but may still be interesting to people. On the 9th is a housing element workshop as part of the board meeting. On the 30th, they're hearing the local coastal plan. On September 13th, they are hearing about winery events, as well as a special events ordinance update is scheduled. On September 20th, they're hearing about the Sonoma Development Center. So that's one that's not 5th District. And then the 27th of September, they are supposed to be talking about the tree ordinance adoption. So these are all always subject to change, but that's the current plan. And it's a lot of juicy items that definitely are things that I know that people care about, at least individually, even if it's not necessarily something that you would want to tackle as a MAC. So just flagging that those things are all kind of coming in force right now.
So Leo, that's on the bottom of the, just any agenda or?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'll screen share just for one brief moment. So
If you go to the end of the agenda packet for any meeting, there's a table.
yeah,
Oh, okay, perfect.
So this is
that
I
Leo
pulled
is going to show us.
Yeah, I pulled the July 19th one here, which is the most recent one that's published. And then if you scroll down to like, it's like page 15, then you can kind of see the plan going forward. So if you're intrigued or you're waiting for some particular item that you're hoping will come up, for example, it looks like currently broadband is scheduled for October 25th. So some of you may be interested in at least looking for that packet and seeing if you might want to attend that meeting, assuming it stays on that day. And November 1 is permit Sonoma management review. So there's a consultant process that's going on right now. And I was actually planning to submit, just as a suggestion, we have been submitting some names for the county administrator and their consultant to interview. So I was thinking maybe the land use members of the MAC might, you know, I was just going to offer for them to reach out to them in case you were interested in speaking to them and giving your feedback about Permit Sonoma's performance. If anybody else has a particular interest in that, whether you're on the MAC or in the public, you can reach out to me and I may be able to add you to whatever process they're doing. I think we mentioned this once or twice before, but it may have been the other MAC. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody have any agenda items to suggest? Scott?
I had two items that to put into the hopper. I'd sent them by email, but one was there's a program to bring the kelp back to the Timber Cove coastline. And that would be interesting to learn more about. And they're calling, I think, for local people to help. And the other thing that's been a concern of mine is that the state parks, particularly in this Salt Point area, has really fallen short of its serving the community with closed down restroom facilities and closed sections that have been long-term closed. I know it's state parks, but it is coast, and it would be nice to put a little flame under them to maybe improve. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yes, hi. I would like to know if it would be possible to bring up an agenda item for fire mitigation resources that may be available at the fire district, county level, or mitigating debris and hazardous trees, dead trees, and things like that. To be able to be more educated about what may be out there and how to go about getting resources to deal with some of these grave concerns.
Okay,
Maybe somebody has some experience in getting involved in that type of thing. I don't know.
So Leo and Elise, correct me if I'm wrong, the program that you guys did, I want to say 2 months ago, 3 months ago on the fire information. Jenny, did you see that one?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
are
so
you talking about the Coastal Collaborative who gave?
well, there's the Coast Collaborative, but there was also a there was a fire program.
Yeah, when Marshall Turbeville.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Right.
And there's a chipper program.
Yeah. So
I'm aware of the chipper program, but I'm talking about things that are way beyond chipping.
All right.
I very much agree with Jenny on this. I've had several residents from North Harbor talk to me about issues they've had up there, and they came to me with them because when I was on the landscape committee, I had been dealing with them as well.
right.
And they're-
Sorry.
I
So
wanted to
we
let
should talk
our
about it.
audience know that the Q&A functionality is available.
sorry.
in the
So
Zoom.
the one I was referring to was the town hall in March. That was the town hall, but that was more about insurance, I guess. So
Mhm.
Didn't we have Marshall Turbeville? It might be 6 months or so, but he gave a presentation and he talked about, all sorts of fire issues, weather. I can find it and see.
It was
Right.
wonderful, but there are great big holes that things are falling through, and I'm supporting Jenny, and I think we should have this as an agenda
right. No,
item.
I agree. I'm trying to sort of, as we go
Right.
through and trying to sort of organize and where we want to focus on something, because
Mhm.
fire is a big issue.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to see, like, what have we done and what is available out there, and how we can focus on, what is most needed. Because we also did a program on fire in the MAC. I'm trying to remember, it must have been
basically
around.
what-
About a year ago.
Yeah, what I'm
Remember?
getting at is people need some way of assistance in figuring out the major problem of having huge trees in areas that people don't have resources to take them down. How do we address that? How can we be fire safe when we cannot get our arms around having to do that? So I wanted to know if there was a way to have an agenda item,
Mhm.
maybe have a subcommittee or whatever is the method, again, to look into this issue and share information about how to go about it.
I think I see your hand, Scott, but
All
I'm going to
right.
respond to Jenny because I'm the chair. I think what I'm hearing you say, Jenny, is that you want to have an agenda item which would be a compendium of resources which are available to different communities to help deal with vegetation management, either through grants or existing county programs. Is that
Correct.
what you mean?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
I'm gonna put that down as an example of something we could do, because I think that's important, and I don't think we've done that in the past. When Marshall Turbeville came, he talked about fighting fires.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the county has put on town halls or presentations in the past about vegetation management mechanisms, but I don't recall seeing one in the coastal areas. The ones that I saw were in the Russian River area, or unspecified parts of the county. And Brian, you're next, and Jenny, I'll make a note
I think
of
Scott's
this.
next.
I'm sorry.
I think Scott's next.
Okay.
All right, what we run smack into, the elephant in the room, is the permitting process in the coastal zone. And in the LCP, there is a program that they are going to undertake that is going to address, we hope, an exemption for this sort of thing. And they're going to bring together CAL FIRE, Coastal Commission, and the county to try to create a program of best practices with an exemption for permits for fuels management. So they want to define that. I think that's the elephant in the room. Maybe we should engage that process in addressing what Jenny's talking about, because if you want to take a tree down and you're in the coastal zone, it's a big process. Cindy can tell you all about it. And so we're trying to get past this hurdle. That's what's in front of us. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. Brian and then Wanda.
So I think it may be, Jenny, you stumbled upon something that maybe is worth more research and maybe ripe for an ad hoc as well.
Are you volunteering?
I already have other committees. I'm already on 2 other committees. So, but Jenny's volunteering.
I guess I am volunteering because I brought the issue up. So I'm ready to work with everybody and anybody to try to get some movement on this and make some progress to make all of our communities safer. We all love our trees, but we all know that there are some things that are just there are just accidents waiting to happen.
Amen.
Okay, let's hear from Wanda and then I'll come back to you, Jenny.
Yeah, just wanted you all to know there's a meeting this Saturday at 10 a.m. at PPI, which is on Fort Ross Road, kind of almost at the top of Fort Ross Road. And it's getting people that have been involved with this kind of issue, fuel reduction work all along the coast there, laying out maps to really look at a larger strategy for fuel reduction. Marshall Tuberville will be there, as well as Matt Green, who's our local forester. And I was just looking at our community forest council webpage. The meeting should be on that page, and I couldn't quickly find it, but it's it's a good place to connect with people and just get updates about what's going on with the local with the coastal restrictions about cutting trees and what's going on there. So 10 a.m. this Saturday at PPI, you are all welcome.
It's the old
Jenny,
Black Mountain.
are you
Old Black
able-
Mountain. What's that?
I was asking Jenny if she's able to go to that meeting.
I have to apologize that I don't know PPI. Where is PPI?
That's okay. It's on Fort Ross Road. So you go up Myers Grade.
Oh, yeah.
Right from Myers Grade, and then just take a right, Fort Ross Road, and it's a few miles up, and then there's a sign, PPI. It's almost at the top of the hill there.
The old Black Mountain camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll be going to this meeting. I could, I'll put in my 2 cents about whatever. I could report back next.
I think Wanda would be great for this committee too.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm afraid I would be. I was sort of trying to avoid that, but yes, I would.
I would maybe I can't commit to going only because I have
that's
real
fine. I just wanted to put it
fear
down.
of driving those roads.
Oh, well then, definitely do not go.
So that is my, I'm
No,
being
I
very,
understand.
I'm terrified of driving those roads. So.
That's honest. That's fine. Yes, I guess I'll be talking then with Brian, who also on this committee. Okay.
I think Brian wiggled out of volunteering for the
Brian, you
committee,
little rascal.
but
Okay.
Paul is waving his hand.
Hi, Paul.
Yeah, I was just told that this meeting that Wanda is talking about is going to be available via Microsoft Teams.
Oh,
And
good.
Bonnie is going to send you the link for how that Microsoft Teams is going to work, so people can
Okay.
access it online.
Okay.
That
And
you
Jenny,
can
that's-
virtually. Yes, I
That's a
think that-
system kind of like Zoom, and
Yeah.
I've used it before and it's easy.
Yeah, I would be delighted to attend that on Saturday morning virtually, yes.
Virtually.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you, Paul.
Okay. So this is, I think this is a probably ad hoc, embryonic ad hoc that doesn't yet have a heartbeat. Okay, Jenny, I'll follow up with you offline about this. So we may or may
Thank you.
not be ready to have an agenda item in 2 months
Right,
about this, but it's in the hopper.
okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Wanda, do you have anything else, or is your hand just still up? Your virtual hand, okay. Okay, I guess I am gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a
A
second,
second.
Okay,
Jenny, and let me take a quick vote. Sorry, it's required. It's Beth,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Marty,
aye.
Paul,
Aye.
Wanda,
I
Brian,
Aye.
and Ginny.
Aye.
Okay, it's
Okay, great.
7:41 and we are adjourned.
very good.
Thank you, and thank you, Leo and Elise.
Yes. Okay, we're all thinking about you.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
very
Thank
much.
you. Great to see
Okay.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.